So I'm staying with the big miracles of the Scriptures, okay? And staying in the Old Testament right now, okay? And so what I'm looking at is the opportunity. Come on in. Looking at one of those moments when, I've never really thought about it. I like to think of parting the Red Sea as being one of the big ones. Calling down fire from heaven's a pretty big one. Being in the lion's den's a pretty big one. Swallowed by a fish, that's a big one. It's a big fish story, okay? And how about being thrown in the fire? Okay, let's talk about that one. You know, back in the day when we were young Christians, we'd say, if I was threatened with death, I would not deny the Lord, you know. Which was easy to say because, you know, I lived in a society where you were not persecuted if you followed Jesus. You went to church, it was a good thing, okay? But the communists, I remember reading a book by Richard Wurmbrand, Tortured for Christ. And what they would do is they would not merely torture you, but they would torture your children in front of you to get you to deny Christ. And that's a little bit more challenging. One child was being tortured and so the father said, I can't allow this. I have to deny Christ. And the son said, don't be a Judas, Dad. Okay? So, yeah. Whole different kind of persecution in that format. And I was struggling with something the other day, and this guy said to me, don't worry, God's going to bring about your happiness. And I like the kind sentiments, but I don't know that my happiness is high on God's agenda. Okay? There are some other issues that he would prefer to prioritize over, am I happy? I'm happy when the sun's shining and I don't have to wear this scarf on a cold 43-degree morning when I got up. Okay? And, all kinds of Christians are being martyred for their faith in Africa, in Southeast Asia, okay, in the Middle East, in Eastern Europe. I don't know that it's about happiness, it's about faithfulness. And I've come to the conclusion that dying for Jesus is probably not as hard as living for Jesus. Living for Jesus, now that's an ongoing challenge. It's an ongoing attack. Yesterday somebody honked at me and it just threw me off. And somebody else, I took my wife to get lunch and, she had to get frisked to make sure that, she didn't have a gun to go to Disney Springs, You just, this kind of stuff puts you in a bad mood, right? And in a bad mood is not happiness, but it's a moment for me to exercise my faith. It's a moment for me to put Christianity into motion. It's that catch you off guard. How do you respond instead of react? This is Christianity. And our passage that I want to talk about today is Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Because, you see, these guys made a commitment to God that when a difficult moment came, they were ready for it. They were ready. And so I want to talk about us getting ready. Now, we all know the story. The Babylonians took the best people from Jerusalem and incorporated them into their society. And if you were a smart one, then you would be tested and brought in to serve in some capacity. Okay? Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, these four guys, they're a life group. All right? And so they pray together. Hey, I'm not going to eat the king's food. And so guess what? They all decided we're going to honor the Lord even though we're in captivity. Some people would go, well, I'm in captivity, you know, God didn't take care of me here, you know. And no, their attitude is, well, I'm not where I want to be, but I still belong to Jesus. And maybe that's a good statement for all of us to think about. I don't love this situation, but I'm still a Christian. And so here we are. They want to honor God, and they want to use their free will to bypass sinful choices and step into godly choices. This is what they have in mind. And so it was a 3-year indoctrination program. That's what it was. So they went for 3 years. Nebuchadnezzar has a whole system where these guys set themselves apart from everybody else. Okay? And they get high positions in Nebuchadnezzar's kingdom. And notice, they stayed faithful to the Lord blessed them, and they have God's favor in captivity. All right? I want you to feel the whole situation there. And it does raise the question, how does your faith withstand adverse circumstances? Do you fall apart? Do you get mad? Do you cross your arms? I remember this one lady, I went to talk to her about Jesus, and she, wanted nothing to do with God because he allowed my mother to have a painful death. I'm like, well, I'm sorry about your mom's painful death. A lot of people have pain. I didn't say this part. A lot of people have painful deaths. It's not beyond me to say the wrong thing, by the way. Sadly. I held my tongue that time. But, we can get frustrated with God. Why did you allow this horrible situation to happen? Why didn't you step into, I had somebody close to me. Why did God allow my spouse to cheat on me? And they're mad. They don't want anything to do with God because he allowed something where that person mismanaged their free will, and God was supposed to save them from that harm. It's the kind of question that I think goes through our minds. Why did God allow this? Okay? And Daniel and his compadres, I mentioned they're a life group. Proverbs 27:17, as iron sharpens iron, so does one person sharpen another. Now, I don't know who you partner with, but you should be partnered with somebody. It might be your spouse. It might be your best friend. It might be a connection at church. But you ought to have a prayer partner, a spiritual partner, somebody you can share your faith with, somebody that edifies you. Okay? And, some of us, we go alone. I understand that. But ultimately, I think you should look for that person that you can call, that you can text, that you can talk to, that is another Christian that helps you in difficult circumstances to make the right decisions, to make the godly decisions. And this is what happens to me. I'll call so-and-so, hey, what do you think about this? And they'll give me the best advice for me. Then I'll call a Christian, and they'll say, well, this would be the best avenue as a Christian. And they're two different pieces of advice. All right? So we're trying to go on the best Christian angle for our decisions. And I want to say one more thing. There's a passage in 1 Corinthians chapter 5 where Paul says, don't associate with the bad folk. And he says, I didn't mean the people of the world. I meant for broken Christians. And you're like, oh. Who's that person talking to you, giving you advice, encouraging your journey, edifying your faith, expanding your whole faith journey? Okay. So this is what you have to ask yourself. Who's feeding your faith? That's what you want to know. Okay? Here, let me grab this guy. Mr. D, come here. Come on over here. Good boy. All right, get over here. Don't make any noise. So, Very important. Second level angle on this one. Who's feeding your faith? Who's encouraging you? Breezy, you want to come home over here? It's all right. Move down like I told you, all right? This is a good time to interrupt. We're all full of interruptions. All right, so this is how a life group works. Daniel has a problem. They pray for him. They have a problem, and he's going to be praying for Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And their problem's a big one. First, Daniel has a problem. I'm going to interpret a dream for Nebuchadnezzar, and he's a little temperamental. If he doesn't like what he hears, off with your head. He literally conquered the entire world. He is the most powerful man on earth, arguably in history. So you're dealing with somebody. And I need prayers when I go to deal with this individual. And now the coin is flipped. Nebuchadnezzar makes a golden statue 90 feet high. And actually, the historian Herodias, he talked about this huge golden statue in the province of Babylon. All right, so it was something that still existed, was still a thing. And Nebuchadnezzar, he lays down an edict. When you hear the music, you bow down and worship the idol that I made to myself. And if you don't, you're going to be burned alive. So it's pretty straightforward. You don't really have any choice, is what he's saying. And somehow this passage has a contemporary ring to it. I know this is 605 BC, but, for you and me, we're invited to prioritize some idols as well. And an idol is an object of excessive devotion. So now I want you to sit down and think, okay, what do I obsess about? What do I give a lot of attention to? What do I focus on? Okay, I can remember measuring how much time I would give to athletics versus how much time I would give to my walk with Jesus. How many hobbies that I poured so much energy into, and compare that to how much time how about watching TV? Okay, watching TV versus how much time I read the scriptures. That's usually not the same amount of time. Of course, I don't really like TV, but you get my point. It's a problem for some people. They spend their whole lives watching television. Okay? And what happens is for Nebuchadnezzar, he's offering the golden idol. And some of us, we worship the golden standard. Okay? Finances. Okay, the golden gavel of power that you are always, your decisions are king over everybody else. The golden tan. No, we want to have that pleasurable hedonistic lifestyle. This golden idol, it has different ways of getting into our system. And there's another idol, and that's self-preservation. And here's something that we all are hoping to live as long as we can, as happy as we can, in the best retirement possible, in the best lifestyle we can attain. Okay, we're after self-preservation. But Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, their obedience is to God's commandment, "Thou shalt have no other gods before me." And charges are brought against them. These guys didn't bow down. I remember hearing about this one, somebody in the Middle East raided another group of people, and they brought all the young men and made them bow down. And then the imam started telling them about, you're going to accept Allah and you're going to reject Jesus. And one guy stood up, no. And so they killed him. Then another kid stood up, and they killed him. Then another kid popped up, and they killed him. And then another kid, and they're like, okay, this isn't going to work. These Christians are not going to deny Jesus. So we're going to have to try a different approach. Now, they were willing to die for Jesus, right there and then, put on the spot. And one person's willingness to stand up for Jesus inspired another person and another person and another person. So I want you to feel how your inspirational steps and faith can influence somebody else. I mean, let me just ask a more personal question. If somebody accused you of being a Christian, would there be any evidence? Okay. Maybe you could pull out your checkbook and say, well, you can see that I give to the Community Presbyterian Church. All right, that would be one way. Or they could tell, well, yeah, every time I'm around this person, they're always talking about Jesus, talking about forgiveness, talking about grace. You're showing me your cross. Madonna wears a cross. Okay? No, it's not that pretty Celtic cross, but still. It can be a piece of jewelry. And anybody can wear a piece of jewelry, but how about the encouragement of your words that come out of your mouth? How about the graceful way you handle situations, a forgiving disposition? Well, I told you before, one of my favorite compliments is I had a crush on this girl, and she goes, there's something different about you. I think you're a Christian. And I was so proud of myself. I pulled it off. Because I didn't know if anybody could tell. I was trying hard, but it's hard to be a Christian and as a young man in Los Angeles. And would your colleagues at work say, yeah, that's a Christian? Would the hair salon folk say, yeah, Christian? Could they tell I'm a Christian at the gym? Where it's all nobody smiles and everybody flexes, It's in a rough environment at the gym. That's why I built my old gym, so I don't have to deal with all those aggressive guys. And you might say, Pastor, my religion's a private matter. You just need to know that statement and that concept is not in the Bible. Never is it supposed to be a private matter. Okay? Our good deeds and good lifestyle is for the purpose of opening up a conversation about Jesus. So, it's not being a good Christian. A good person and a good Christian are two different things. Well, these guys are not willing to bow down to King Nebuchadnezzar's idol. Okay, and so this makes King Nebuchadnezzar mad. But, these gentlemen, they work for him. They have a high office. They run provinces. So, guys, I'm going to give you another chance. And so here's what's going to happen. I'm going to give you a chance to change your mind and live. And apparently King Nebuchadnezzar forgot about the time when Daniel answered a dream of his. All right? He's forgotten about the time when he made the big proclamation, Daniel's God is the God who answers dreams. He's the miraculous guy. He's the one. Okay? And so just want you to understand that sometimes we have a short-term memory as well. We forgot what God did for us last week or last month or last year or that one time when you desperately cried out in prayer and He answered. We have this, what have you done for me lately? Relationship with God. What if all He did was save you from sin and establish a place for you in heaven and did nothing else for you here on earth? Would you follow Him? Still a pretty big gift, yeah? Eternity versus a small amount of time on earth. I think I'll go with that one. But that's not what He does. He answers your prayers. He shows up with the miraculous moves. He cares for you and protects you and provides for you. It's incredible when you get into the intricacies of walking with Jesus. And so many people, they stay on the outskirts, and I read my scripture and I say the Lord's Prayer, and that's a good prayer. It's the best prayer. It's the one Jesus told us to pray. But you're supposed to put it into motion and have an ongoing relationship. And this is what Jesus was hoping, that intimacy I talked about on Sunday. Not a contract, you get to go to heaven because of what I did, but the friendship on the journey of faith. Well, the king says, I'm going to give you another opportunity. And I'm going to play the music, and then you're going to bow down. And if you don't bow down, I'm going to throw you in the fire. And here's where King Nebi makes his mistake. He says, what God is there that can deliver you out of my hands? Now, everything would have been fine. The guys would have been toasted and honored as martyrs for their faith. But they had to bring God in, King Nebuchadnezzar. He had to mock God, say that you don't have the power to put up against what I want to do. And God takes that personally. All right? And I want you to feel this. A little compromise and you can go home to your wife and children. Oh yeah, I'm going to get on my knees, but I don't mean it. My fingers were crossed behind my back. Okay? I'm on my knees, but I'm praising Jesus while I'm doing this. Yeah. These guys, to live is Christ and to die is gain. The honor of God is more important than life itself. And sometimes you don't have to die. I remember at my first church, this one guy, I knew him from the Rotary, okay? And he goes, yeah, it was a rough week for me. I lost a $400,000 account. I was interviewed in the newspaper, and I mentioned my faith in Jesus, and somebody immediately called and canceled the $400,000 account. But it's not the first time, Pastor, that I lost money in accounts for making my testimony public. And I'm thinking, the first time I lost a big account, I'd probably say, well, maybe this is not a good business move to proclaim Jesus in the newspaper when I'm trying to get ahead in life. And besides, the more account I have, the bigger my tithe. Okay? But for him, proclaiming Jesus was more important than any account. Would you continue to take a stand for Jesus at that price? And we can keep our faith private. The problem is, the good news is it won't interfere with you getting a job or keeping a job. You won't have to put up with people's ridicule. But friends, what happened to America is all the Christians kept their faith private. And what's occurred? We've allowed a small amount of atheists, secular atheists, to now be the dominant voice. There's still 40% churchgoers. There's still a lot of Christians out there. Yes, I know the no religion group is rising, but if Christians felt like stepping out, you never want to make fun of Muhammad, right? Off with your head. But it's funny. If you go on a Google platform and say, tell me a joke about Jesus, jokes will come forward. Say, tell me a joke about Muhammad, no jokes. I tried it. No jokes. No jokes are allowed against Muhammad, but have no problem ridiculing Jesus. Why? Because Muslims will not allow Muhammad to be ridiculed. But we don't fight for the honor of Jesus like that. And because we don't, you can see what's taking place in our nation. So, this is the cost of discipleship. If anyone wishes to come after me, let them deny themselves, pick up their cross, and follow me. This means putting God's interests over our own self-interests. So let's get back to King Nebuchadnezzar. What God is there that can triumph over me? And really, we put a lot of energy on, strong human endeavor. If humanism. Look what we can accomplish. And, it's funny. I believe the Empire State Building was built in 135 days. Something radical like that. Could you imagine building the Empire State Building in 135 days today? No. Back in the day, they They cut out a piece of South America so there could be the canal. You didn't have to go all the way down South America. Okay? You know how long that would take for us? Okay? See, you can make things more complicated than they need to. And a lot of times people think your Christianity is incompatible with, humanity's scientific, technological advances. Evolution has proven that creationism is false, but it really, really hasn't. If you get into the conversation, you're always going to find that there's this one piece of information that is speculation that continues on the whole evolutionary thought. So we got this fact, that fact, we don't know here, that fact, the other fact. And I'm like, wait a minute, whoa, 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 whoa. You can't disregard my faith and then have these loopholes in your position. But we don't know this. We're not taught this. We don't research it. On the Titanic's maiden voyage, some fool said, even God can't sink this ship. If he wouldn't have said that, And people cry out, where is God? Why doesn't he make a difference in the world? Friends, he's available. And you want to know where he makes himself available? Through us. Through your life, through your prayers, through your fellowship. And so, if you're not vibing with and in a fantastic relationship with Jesus, and by the way, fantastic just means I do believe, help my unbelief. But the ongoing conversation, if you keep it going, power is going to be released in your life. And people are going to see who he is. Well, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, I can see the conversation. What shall we do? And Shadrach says, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. And what about you, Meshach? Let me fall into the hands of God and not man. What about you, Abednego? Give me liberty or give me death. Oh, wait, that's 1775, Patrick Henry. Never mind. But, most of us have a Bible verse that we anchor on. I had a quandary the other day. I had two of my favorite Bible verses, and I didn't know which one was my favorite. So I had to sit there for 15 minutes and figure out, okay, this is why it used to be my favorite, and this is why that one used to be my favorite. And then I realized, I could have two favorites. Life verses that get you over the hump when the world falls apart. Life verses that you clung to when everything else didn't make sense. Life verses that was a promise from God given to you at that desperate moment. And that's why you need to be reading the Bible, so he can drop a life verse to get you through those moments in life. Where's Daniel, where all of his buddies are about to get toasted? He's on his knees praying. Anybody who's going through a difficult time, you're supposed to be on your knees praying. We are intercessors. We fight the battle. We can move the hand of God. He responds to prayers. Okay? So important. And I want you to be an advocate for your friends, for your family, for your church, for your pastor, for our vision plans to bring Jesus to as many people as possible. All right? Well, the three have established Jesus, God, at the center of their lives. So when the persecution comes, they see it as an opportunity to be a witness. And you kind of have to admire their style. Okay, well now when I play the music, King Nebi, no need to play the music. We don't need to hear the music. Okay? They're not even going to entertain compromise. I'd say, well, is it a long song? Because that gives me another 7 minutes before I wouldn't even hear the song. You ever play that game? What's the last song you want to hear before you die? Someone will say, well, I want to hear this praise song, or this one was a great tune. For me, I'm always, okay, what's the longest song that I could hear? All right. You can see how warped my mind is. This is what they tell them. Our God is able and will deliver us. They have that kind of relationship with God. Now, where does that kind of confidence come from? I'll tell you where it comes from in my life. When I'm in that ongoing everyday prayer devotional life, reading the scriptures, hanging out with other Christians. I prayed and God answered this way. I leaned on God and He showed up in that way. You start to realize that as your journey impacts my journey and we share that journey together, iron sharpens iron. I want you to see one more time how fellowship works. And you don't have to convince God to bring you His mercy. 1 Peter 5:7, cast your burdens on Him because He cares for you. So important. You don't have to twist His arm. He already loves you. But then they take it a step further. And even if He doesn't save us, I just want you to know, King, that we will never bow down to your idol. Well, this makes the most powerful man on earth a little bit angry. His face gets contorted. He has them heat up the furnace 7 times hotter, and all that means is as hot as possible. And when I say as hot as possible, when they throw Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in, those guys get burned to death. Okay? It's hot. And for them, if God has a different plan for my life, it doesn't matter. I hope He uses me this way. I'd love to see some deliverance. If He wants to use me as a martyr, whatever God wants, I'm at His disposal. And remember, I started off, am I going to be comfortable? God's going to make you comfortable, William. No. It's not about my comfort. It's about, am I honoring God? This is what's a big deal. Am I bringing Him glory? Am I magnifying His name? Am I pointing to Him as my source, who I believe in life or death? You know how many people give their lives to Jesus at funerals after they listen to their loved one's Christian testimony? They go, wow, I didn't know that. I want to be like them. Yeah. I want you to know something. You could save people through your final testimony. Judy Gregg, she's at the reading of her father's will, and the lawyer reads a page about his faith in Jesus Christ and how the kids need to embrace His Lord as their Lord. Do you have that set up at your reading of the will? Maybe you should. Maybe you should have a piece of paper ready for me to read. Pastor, when I die, and by the way, I can read it with more emotion depending upon the honorarium that you put with it, okay? Anyways, you should have that ready so that the Spirit of Jesus can move off of you onto them. All right? I think we should all think about this. Well, anyways, God, who let His Son go to the cross, He's probably willing to let His son and daughter, you and me, deal with some difficult moments, because more important than our comfort on earth is our testimony about heaven. And I need us to get our priorities straight here. Okay? Well, there comes a moment for all of us when a decision has to be made, when a letter has to be written, when a stand has to be taken. Okay? Right now, in many countries, your Christianity will cost you your job and your house, your freedom, and even your life. There's a passage in Hebrews 12:4, in your struggle against sin, you have not resisted to the point of shedding blood. Oh, you mean that's a possibility? Well, these guys treated God's glory more valuable than their own life. They saw it coming. They knew the situation. They made a resolve. I'd rather die for God than live in Nebuchadnezzar's world. And so they get thrown in. And they probably were waiting for the pain to start. The smell of fringed clothing and hair. Okay? But that didn't happen. Instead, there was another guy in the fire, brighter than the flames that were 7 times hot. Who is it? It's got to be Jesus, yeah? There he is. And if it's not Jesus, it's, somebody. Maybe God showed up there. Probably Jesus. Can make a good case. But this is, do you see what's going on here? Jesus is with you in your fire. Jesus is with you in your furnace. Jesus is responding to your prayers. Well, remember the one missionary that went into the South American jungles, the Amazon jungle, I think it was, and they martyred him. And it says that when they looked up, there were angels in the trees. And his wife stepped forward and said, guys, let me tell you about Jesus, who my husband was trying to tell you about. And they all gave their lives to the Lord. So, he died, right? Did he die? Or did he go to heaven? Did God make his death an opportunity for angels and the advancement of the gospel to go forward? Yes. I want you to see that in death, God can move. And would you think that that missionary would rather die so that all those people he was trying to reach would meet Jesus? Or live and struggle to see if they might meet Jesus? I know he would have chose option A. So, the furnace, that place in life that scares us, it's dangerous, it's painful, it can be fatal. It's where Jesus is. So I want you to think about your own dangerous, difficult, painful situations right now, because guess who's going to be there when you belong to him, when you grab a hold of his name? Jesus is going to be there. And I want you to know this, one bent knee, they would have never experienced the most radical moment of being thrown into the fire and not being harmed. And sometimes God lets you go all the way into the fire. They're praying that God would keep them from the fire. Jesus decided to meet them in the fire. This is important. Okay? And let me share something even more fun. Isaiah 43. When you walk through the fire, I will be with you, and you will not be scorched. Now, this Bible verse was written 300 years before, 200 and some years before, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So, here's how the Bible works. Here's a verse that I can grab a hold of and apply to my present situation. Do you see why I'm always telling you to read the Bible? Because it's your arsenal to know how God's going to show up in your life. And I think for you and me, the problem is we are all about furnace avoidance. We don't even like low-level flames. We want God to deliver us from our negative work environment, and that difficult person, in that challenging situation. Or maybe God put that challenging situation there so you would lean on him. Remember, Paul said, remove the thorn in the flesh, and God says, no, my grace is sufficient for you. You're going to lean on me in this problem. Maybe God wants you to be the Christian that brings the folks at your office. He wants you to be the Christian in your social circle. Wants you to be the Christian at the family events, with love and joy and conversation about the Lord. All right? I want you to rethink what furnace God might have you in on purpose. Well, King Nebi says, guys, come on out. Listen, I'm changing my mind. You know this golden statue that everybody's supposed to worship me on? From now on, we're going to worship their God. Changes the edict of the land. Their God. Happens to him 3 times. Once with Daniel, once here, and one more time after he gets humbled. Is your faith changing anybody's edict about how they feel about God? Is your faith giving a demonstration about the power of God, the answered prayers, the amazing love? Is your faith sparking anything in anybody? Because I'm pretty sure that it's supposed to. Here's King Nebuchadnezzar. That's what he says. From now on, their God is to be honored, and anyone who speaks against this God will be cut to pieces and torn from limb to limb, and their house turned into a rubbish heap. He's not big on religious freedom, okay? Do you know that right now in the Middle East, if you offend in the wrong way, they bulldoze your house? I thought it was fascinating to learn that and then know Daniel chapter 3. I think it should be Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, and you